detour. That's a 3-lane bridge for traffic, a walking lane closest to us, and a bike lane on the other side of the bridge. The second bridge down there, the A. Murray McKay, that was completed in 1970. That's a 4-lane bridge for traffic, no walking or bikes on that bridge. They're both suspension bridges, and as of April 1st, 2025, they are now toll-free. So, since they've been built, they were tolls on them. It was really nice to have them free now. Nice to save the $1.25, but what's even nicer is the flow on and off the bridge. The toll booths are gone, so it's a lot easier on and off. Doesn't bottle up as much anymore. Now if you look over to the left over here, you'll see 2 identical buildings with the windows in it. And they're called Purdy's Wharf 1 and 2. They're office towers in there. They do have a beautiful view going to work in the morning, looking out over the harbor. They also have a very efficient way of staying cool in the summer. And what they do is it's a geothermal technology. They draw ocean water up into the cooling system and pump it through the building. And that's how they cool those buildings. I'm not quite sure the specifics on how that works, but I do know it's a lot more efficient than regular air conditioning. It's got a couple little waves coming in here, guys, nothing major. Just from the ferry. I like to hit them lightly so you guys don't get splashed. I don't want you to think you're at SeaWorld. That building just past the office towers, looks like a lighthouse at the end of it. That's our casino right there. And that's the end of the 4-kilometer boardwalk. And our boardwalk is very interactive. A lot going on. A lot of shops and restaurants. A lot of things for families to do. Areas for kids to play. It's the #1 tourist destination in Nova Scotia. I've already mentioned. Looking down the harbor, you see those red meat stacks down there? They're owned by Nova Scotia Power. That's a power plant. That burns oil and natural gas. And they're supplying energy to all of Metro as well as other areas of Nova Scotia. And there are tallest freestanding structures in Nova Scotia at 200 meters. So that would be close to 500 foot range. Very tall. Now looking over to our left over here, you see small Navy vessels over there. And if you look all the way down the harbor to that big white building down there, that's all D&D, Department of National Defense. And it's the east coast side of the Canadian Navy. And we do have the largest side of the Canadian Navy here in Halifax. The other port is out in Esquimalt, BC, the west coast. Those smaller Navy vessels are called Kingston-class inshore patrol vessels. They're involved with sweeping for sea mines, as well as drug surveillance work. Working with the U.S. Coast Guard and the U.S. Navy, they'll go down to the Caribbean and watch out for the drug runners. And they are successful. They have made some busts. I know this because my girlfriend has 2 sons in the Navy. So they've given us some info on that. But I promise you it's not classified information. You guys doing okay there? Now that Halifax shipyard building is owned and operated by a private company called Irving. They're from St. John, New Brunswick, and they are our richest family on the east coast of Canada. They are billionaires. They're involved with oil and gas, pulp and paper, and shipbuilding. They have a large contract with the Canadian government right now to build Navy ships here in Halifax. They just finished building 6 Arctic patrol vessels, and now they're test cutting steel, and they're going to be building 15 new warships for the Canadian Navy called River-class destroyers. And we really are in need of new Navy ships here in Canada. It's been decades since our government has really put any money into it, and it's good to see. They're also looking at purchasing some new submarines as well that go under the ice for long periods of time, and that's all about protecting our north. Now if you look over to the left, up here in front of us a bit, you see warship 339. That is the Halifax class frigate. That is active. All the ships that we have active. None of them are decommissioned. That is that ship there, 20 sailors when it heads out. Takes a chopper on board, and it will go out for 6-7 months on deployment. Go for a long time. And you can see 2 more of them that are tucked in the jetty. You can see the bow area and the stern area of the 2 ships that are tucked in there. 80s and 90s, so they're getting pretty old. They have a big anti-aircraft gun on them on the bow area, and they also have missiles and torpedoes on board as well. Now past these Halifax class frigates, you'll see 2 identical ships back to back. There's also another one underneath the McDonald Bridge. And those are our Arctic patrol vessels that were built here in Halifax. You can tell by looking at the front of them, they're very heavy. They're a class 5 icebreaker. They go with about 85 sailors, and they also take a chopper on board as well. They are designed to go up north and cut right through the Northwest Passage. And that's also about protecting the north from unwanted activity. Now, if you look just ahead a little bit on the left, you'll see that warship 431. Well, I have a pretty cool story to tell you about that ship. My girlfriend's youngest son works in that boat. He's a marine electrician. Last year they were on deployment and they were heading up north, and that ship lost all propulsion out in open sea. They were dead in the water. So when they figured out what was wrong with it, they realized they didn't have a part on board to get that ship working. So Rochelle's son starts thinking outside the box, and he comes up with the idea that he can take a component out of the industrial coffee maker that they have on board and put it in place and get that ship working again, which they did. He got an award 3 weeks ago for that from the Canadian Navy. He was also recognized by the Canadian Defense Minister, and he got top sailor in the third quarter in 2024 for the Atlantic Fleet. And that's out of thousands of sailors, so that's, you know, that's a pretty big award. That's what you call that real MacGyver stuff, you know? Making something out of nothing. Now this white boat coming up here on the left is called the Harbour Queen. And it does the same thing as that ship that we saw. Big group event. Pretty fun boat. And there's a big red wheel on the back of it that is just for decoration. That does not propel that boat. All right, guys, we've got some boat weight coming at us here. And a couple big ones here, guys. We're going to be rocking. Still on back there?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. Still there. That's good. These boats are like big flotation devices on the water. You know, they just float along. All right, guys, we're getting ready to go under the McDonald Bridge, and we're heading into an area of the harbor known as the Narrows. You see how it narrows off in here before it opens up into that great big basin of water I was telling you about, the Bedford Basin. I'm going to give you a little history lesson here. And the event I'm going to tell you about happened right out in front of us. Pretty much at the exact location. So imagine this. 1917, December 6th, at 9:05 in the morning, we had an event here called the Halifax Explosion. The large French cargo ship called the Mont Blanc, carrying a whole lot of explosives, and a large Norwegian supply ship called the Emo. So the Emo was leaving the Narrows and the Mont Blanc was coming in. They were messaging each other but they got their messages mixed up. They basically made a big mistake, and the emo ended up striking the Mont Blanc. Now that wasn't the worst part of it, but what was bad is that the Mont Blanc caught fire, and it was carrying citric acid, TNT, gun cotton, and benzol. Tons and tons of these products. Not good when you mix them with fire. So this ship's burning away. A lot of people are coming down to the shoreline to watch this ship burn. But there was a lot of industry on the shoreline back then. It was wartime. We had a train system that went along the shore, and there was a dispatcher working for the trains on this particular day. His name was Vincent Coleman. When he saw the Mont Blanc burning, he immediately started messaging all the trains that were due into the harbor momentarily, telling them to back off. Don't come in, it's dangerous, this ship's burning and she's gonna blow. He knew what was on the Mont Blanc. Well, he waited at his post until he got confirmation from the trains that they received his message and that they were staying out of the harbor. Because of his efforts, he actually saved up to 500 lives by doing what he did. Unfortunately for Vincent Coleman, his time ran out. The Mont Blanc burned for 20 minutes, and when she blew like a 3-kiloton bomb. It was the largest man-made explosion prior to the 2 atomic bombs that dropped. The official death toll, 1,782 people killed instantly and up to 9,000 injured. So that death toll also went up. One of the anchors and one of the cannons off the Mont Blanc flew over 4 kilometers in different directions. But they felt the blast well over an hour's drive away. And by the way, the anchor weighed over 1,100 pounds. 2 tsunami waves went up on both sides of the shore, and we had a Mi'kmaq community just past the power plant with an indigenous group, and they got wiped out with the tsunami wave that hit them. Almost 300 people went blind during the explosion. Anyone near windows or looking out windows, they all imploded inwards. So they got shattered glass in the eyes. Happens, it's like, instantaneous. And we had an association started up called the CNIB, the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, to take care of them, and that's still running today. Now the first city to come up and help Halifax recover and rebuild was the city of Boston. Look, Bostonians all up front here. They sent up help, and that Christmas we sent them a great big Nova Scotia Christmas tree as a token of our appreciation. And in 1971, that tradition started up again, and it's still running today. Every year you guys get one of our big trees and you do a big tree lighting ceremony down there. They talk about why they get the tree, and it's really very cool. They have a concert. We have dignitaries from Nova Scotia that go down for that event as well. And we also do a big send-off from Nova Scotia. So it's quite something. Thank you for the help, guys. Another crazy story. I didn't believe it. I had to look it up. A guy told me on the boat just recently. He said that during the explosion hit, there was a sailor that was close to shore, and he got blown over a mile in the air. And he survived. He survived it. 1 mile, I looked it up on Google. His name is Charles. So, and other people got blown in the air and survived, but not a mile. This guy flew in the air a mile. Now my grandmother was only 6 years old when the explosion hit. And she told me that she remembered that morning vividly as a 6-year-old girl. That all the windows in the house blew out, blew in, and the house shook. And the blast was so loud that she couldn't even describe how loud it was. She He said it was deafening. And a lot of people actually went blind or went deaf during the explosion as well. And only one crew member off the Mont Blanc actually died. And that's because they knew what was on the boat. So they abandoned ship, they got on their tender boats and headed off to the Dartmouth side and took off. Remember, they had 20 minutes to get away. They left the boat to drift towards the Halifax shoreline. And there were some British sailors that jumped on board to try to put the fire out. We know what happened to them. Right? They weren't the ones that flew through the air and survived. But yeah, and a massive snowstorm the next day. The very next day there was a big snowstorm, so that made rescue effort even like a lot more difficult. There you have it, guys. Halifax explosion. Did I give you more detail than what you knew about it? Yeah, good. If you notice on the bottom of the Navy ship, there's that yellow strapping that goes around. Well, that's called boom. They use that as a precautionary measure, just in case they leak any oil or gas, and it holds it in place. Doesn't allow it to spill into the harbor, which I really appreciate being a tour operator. And also, in the wintertime, I work for a company called Eastern Canada Response Corporation. So I am trained to respond to oil spills. Luckily, so far, all my work has been training and preparation. No oil spills yet. We don't need them. Thank you. Yeah. It is a world-class harbor here in Halifax. It's just for the aesthetics and the shape of it. You know, you come in big, then it narrows off, and then it opens right back up big again. It's very deep down there. Up here, right now, we're sitting at 64 feet. Now, starting from George's Island all the way down to about the middle of the basin, you know, 60 to 90 feet, and then it just starts dropping rapidly. So I'm thinking one of those ice ages must have ripped it out, right? Doing a lot of work on the bridge this year. Pretty soon they'll be wrapping all that staging and sandblasting all the paint off, checking for structural integrity, making sure there's no fractures or anything like that. You know, it's one of those things that you have to be proactive, right? Because an accident is not optional. Want us out about 200 meters from the Navy. That's why I'm out this far. They don't like us too close. And we're already pretty close. We've had Navy destroyers in here from the US. And they have an armed guard standing on the bow holding a great big gun. And they also have a Zodiac in the water doing rounds. An armed guard as well. So I stay clear of them. Does it do you any good to be complacent, right? we've had some good weather. We have had good weather. Hopefully it'll be nice for the rest of your trip. Get a lot of people up from Arizona, California, even Florida, trying to escape the heat down there. I can remember when the top heats were like 100, 105, 80. Now it's like 115, holding low temperatures. Scary stuff, really. Start going up to 120, 125. You start seeing people moving. Can't live in it. It's already pretty much can't livable in 115. Quite a hike up that hill, right? I can always tell the tourists going up that hill, you know, because it's challenging, right? Motor up, climbing it down. I mean, you know, I would say drive up. Yeah, I would say drive up. There are some areas to park up there. But if you take your time, you can walk up too, right? Yeah, it is walkable, absolutely. Navy ship over on our right, 707. You see it painted there with camouflage. That commemorates the Battle of the Atlantic. We painted a lot of the ships back then like that. And that's because of open sea. Couldn't tell which way the ship was moving. They had a hard time determining that. So that's why they painted them like that. Now a lot of our ships are painted gray, called battleship gray. Just like the U.S. Navy as well. They're all like gray. They're a little darker of a gray, but it's very hard to notice them out in open ocean. Actually a U.S. boat up here in front of us. I think it's U.S. Hold it. That's the stars and stripes in it. bigger ships come into other countries, they fly their flag at the stern and our flag at the top. Real respect thing. Like it's done with all ships, Navy ships, any big ship. Here last summer. Anybody know who Robert Blank is? You know? No, somebody different guy. The guy I'm talking about is owner of Home Depot. He's also owner of the Atlantic NFL team. And he's a multi-billionaire. His yacht was worth $350 million. And we also had J.K. Rowling's yacht here, well, last year. She had a big yacht. Hers was $150 million, I think it was. But look at our casino over here. Now, if you look at the windows there in the casino, they really are only for decoration. You can't see in and you can't see out. There's only one time in a casino. It's called gambling time. They don't want you to know if it's daytime or nighttime. Those clocks on the wall, it's gambling. Now our casino opened up in 2001 in this building, but it got its start in 1995 in that building with the green roof, that Marriott Hotel. And that hotel opened up in 1986 under the name Sheraton. And it was still a Sheraton in 1995 when the casino started in there. The casino was originally run by Caesars here in Halifax, but now it's run by the Great Canadian Gaming Corporation. There's a headway system that runs from the casino into these two office towers, into the Marriott Hotel, across a couple of streets and into a mall. They have a beautiful food court in that mall, so that comes in real handy for all these workers, especially in the wintertime. When it's cold and they don't want to go outside, they walk right through the headway and they can get a nice lunch. It's also great for parking, you know, arcades and stuff. Way to get around. In front of this Marriott Hotel, you'll see three paintings up here. It's actually graffiti work right here now. It's July 5th to the 13th. Doing all kinds of graffiti stuff, but when all that's done, they'll prime them over, and then local artists will come in, and then they'll paint. Just leave them up for a little while, and then do the same thing all over again. Great way for local artists to get their work done. Not quite sure what's going on there, but I'm sure the artists know. Now, if you look on the right there, the red and the green building, in behind there is historic property, like old Halifax in there. You got the old stone buildings there, back in the 1800s. And they did survive the explosion. Can't say that about the windows in the building, but the buildings themselves there. Pittsford and Black's a really good restaurant in there. This is the last summer for Pittsford and Black. Salty's closed last summer. And that's because the owner of these buildings are not renewing their lease. They're redeveloping this area. And Salty's was there for over 40 years. It was a very popular seafood restaurant. Sad to see it go. Had a lot of dates in that restaurant over the years. This blue boat over here, up here in front of us, the Co-op the Spirit. This does big group events, and it also acts as a ferry service going to and from George's Island when it's open. Next building here is called the Queen's Mark. There's offices in here, apartments. There's a beautiful hotel called the Muir. Shops and restaurants as well on the bottom. This silver display right here on my right is a working tidal beacon. So it tells us how high or how low the tide is, depending on how it's lit up. I can tell by looking at where it's lit up right now, tide is now on the way in. Those lights rise and fall with the tide. Those stairs leading into the water represent a relationship between land and sea. And also back in the 1800s when the British were here, they referred to this area as the Queen's Landing, but we refer to it as the Queen's Mark. That building on the land with the flag wrapped around it, that's the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic. I highly recommend a trip in there. With the Titanic exhibit, as well as an exhibit on the Halifax explosion. We'll show you photos on what the city looked like after the explosion. This ship here, the Acadia, it survived the First and the Second World War. It was a merchant ship, but now it's a floating museum, and it is open to the public. Over 100 years old. This last vessel here, the Sackville, the last surviving corvette from World War II. They built over 250 of these ships, and this is the last one floating. We're lucky to have her in Halifax, and it was involved in the Battle of the Atlantic. Had a hand in the sinking of a German U-boat. And this is also open for viewing. At the end of this fort, the monument, the last steps, where a lot of our sailors got on ships, sailors and soldiers, got on the ship to head overseas to fight, but unfortunately, they did not make it. All right, guys, that concludes the tour. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, guys. You may now exit the boat. All remain seated until I tie up at the dock.